All right, so welcome to session 3 of our Strategic Workforce Planning for Health Professions Education and Training Learning Collaborative. Hope everyone had a good couple of weeks, and thanks to everyone who got the homework and everything completed, and hope you all had productive sessions with Kelly and Kiki. Here today, we've got Suzanne Spear, the Director of Workforce Development for the STAR Center. We've also got behind the scenes Mariah Blake running all of our tech side of things. So just remember, if you have any technical issues, you can contact her in the chat, or you can email her at mblake@clinicians.org. And then I'm Alex Rowling, and I'll also be with us today. And then we have Kelly Rondu presenting session 3. Just like before, she's going to lead you through this session today, and we're going to go over some excellent workforce stuff. So again, this is all put on by Association of Clinicians for the Underserved. STAR Center is our NTAP. And just a reminder, if possible, be present. If you're up for it, be on camera. And then feel free to use the chat box when we're doing questions, unmute yourselves. And today you're also going to have plenty of time in groups to discuss stuff. So hopefully we'll have good discussions today. And then at the end of the session, just a reminder, please do fill out that little short evaluation, because that's really important for us to be able to keep doing all this. All right. And then we have a mentee, or sorry, yeah, the learning collaborative goals. Just a reminder, we want to look through the material that's being presented today, going over that workforce, the strategic plan that Kelly made up. That's going to be a big part of today. And that really is an excellent tool for kind of analyzing the needs of our workforce, retention and recruitment. And I think that is it. We're going to have a quick Mentimeter here. So if everyone remembers, we're going to go to menti.com, and you can type in that code there. And I'll put that in the chat real quick. You can also scan the QR code with your phone. And we'll give everyone one more second to get that. And
yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll stop sharing, Alex, and then you can share the Menti.
Okay. So we've got our Mentimeter question for today. The icebreaker is, what do you think there are more of in the world, doors or wheels? And this was one that I heard the other day for the first time. It might be like a trending thing, I don't know. But I thought, oh, it's got to be wheels. Like every car has 4 wheels. There's tons of cars. There's like bicycles and stuff. But then I started thinking about how many doors just my apartment has in it, and like cars have doors and everything. So now I can't get my brain off of this. So I just wanted to see what people thought there might be more of. And it looks like right now, more people think that there's wheels out there than doors. And I don't know, I guess it's subjective whether doorways count, right? Like just a doorway, but without an opening and closing door. That, see, this leads you down this path. And I apologize to everyone who's going to lay awake tonight trying to figure this one out in their brain. Kelly's shaking her head. I have just ruined her evening. But it looks like everyone's putting their money on wheels. So that was interesting. Few doors people though. Wheels just bumped up even more.
Lindsay coming in with the philosophy of the doors to new opportunities.
Oh, that's
Love
pretty
it.
good.
That's awesome.
I tried really hard, but I couldn't come up with a better philosophical statement.
No.
Lindsay, that is a great quote, and I think that I'm literally going to screenshot this, and I'm gonna quote you, if that's okay. Like if I use it again, may I credit you with this?
You are welcome to steal it. It's honestly the first place my head went, but I'm a very optimistic, positive person. So.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
Hey, you can't break my brain right before the session.
that was excellent.
So,
yeah, so do we have, is there an answer? Or are we just gonna, or is it just for us to think about it? I'm really curious.
I think if someone wants to really practice random sample surveying, they could walk outside and just start counting all the wheels they can find and walk inside and count all the doors. And don't forget any rolling carts that might be in your place of business. And so, yeah, I think it's just an unanswerable question.
All right.
Anyway,
Awesome.
I will stop sharing.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Alex,
Cool.
for breaking my brain, because now I'm like, are ball bearings wheels? Like, what do,
Yeah,
goodness.
it's
Thanks, dude.
nothing
Alright,
worse than a subjective quiz question.
All right, let me go ahead and get this PowerPoint up. Thanks to everybody for being here today. I'm excited to kind of move into a more hands-on opportunity for us. But yeah, session 3, it's March of 2022. 2022 is flying. I'm going to start out addressing some resources. So as you all are working through strategic workforce plans, I'm a big believer in working smarter and not harder. So if there's not a reason for you to invent something new, why? Why, I guess, is where I come down to it. I would rather be like on a beach with a book, maybe a hammock of some sort, than recreating the wheel, if you will. Alex, geez Louise, broken. So I just wanted to share these with you at the top of the today's conversation, and these will be available to you in the slide deck as well. So going back over the broad community health center structure, FQHC structure through HRSA and BIPIC, we've got the primary care associations in each of the states, or sometimes in 1 and 2 states, and we've got the 2 regionals. We have our NTAPs, like our good friends from ACU and the STAR 2 Center, MHP Salud, CHC Inc., and then the new THC GME NTAP. I have a little bit more information on that, and I probably will have more as we go forward. And I'm going to get it wrong. It's a university, and I want to say University of Virginia, though I could be wrong. And they're working directly with the folks who got the THC GME planning and development funds. So unclear at this point how broadly their resources are going to be available for folks interested in THC GME, but more to come on that. And then of course we have our AHEX, NAC, and then me, I'm Whipley, and my team. Last time we talked a lot about the needs assessment tool and just like thinking about how data can help determine what programs we want to move into. And I wanted to share these 4 resources on doing needs assessment. I'm assuming that as health centers, you all are doing needs assessments on a semi-regular basis for your applications with HRSA, but in case you haven't seen these pages, here are a few. And I would recommend the UDS Mapper is a tool that I thought I understood, but every time I go to one of their presentations on how to use their tool, I learn something new and really interesting. And you can drill down to some pretty finite stuff. So talking about health professions and education and training programs in specific, there's a handful, and there will be more out there. I apologize, my dog is participating in the presentation today. If you're looking at the MDDO, you're going to want to start with ACGME. Psych is covered under that organization for accreditation standards and frequently asked questions, things like that. There are also a number of resources such as the Education Health Center Guide, which I supported writing back in my time at NWRPCA. You see its website there. Variety of resources at CPCA, which I showed last time, and it's on the next slide again for easy access. ruralgme.org. That is not an extensive list by any means, but it's a good place to get started if those are the roles you're looking at. For NP programs, I really recommend going to CHC Inc. They specifically, I have it right here, a couple of years, maybe a year or 2 before we developed the Education Health Center Guide, the folks at Weitzman CHC Inc. developed this. Of course, it's blurry, but it's called Training the Next Generation. It's an actual handbook for residency and fellowship programs for nurse practitioners and community health centers. And it's got all kinds of, almost 200 pages of resources about curriculum, funding, operations and administration. Pretty much anything you can think of is in here. And that link on this slide goes directly to the PDF version of that. I don't know if hard copies are still available. And then as you're looking at CHW programs, I really, really recommend MHP Salud. They have a ton of great stuff out there. And I'll look more into it if folks are interested, but I believe Oregon is one of the first, if not only, states to be looking into an actual kind of accredited program for certificate program for CHWs, promotorists, navigators, however you want to look at that role. They're different in each state. But MHP Salute is a fabulous place to get started with that. CPCA, we saw this slide last time. There's a whole bunch of stuff related to health professions, education and training down to, and I really recommend spending time with their smart sheet. So it's their database of all of the different resources they've found. It's very California specific, but I think if you're going in with the knowledge that if you're not in California, that not everything's going to apply to you, can help guide you through some really interesting stuff. Dental, you're going to want to start with CODA, and that's going to be your DDS and etc. So your hygienist as well can be found there. That's going to be your accreditation standards, program outlines. If you're looking at dental assistants, the Washington Association, the Washington PCA has a program. Now, as I'm going to talk about a couple of different primary care associations here, so how I would suggest going and approaching these folks would be to perhaps reach out to your state PCA and see if they have connections with those other, I'm sure they do have connections with these other PCAs, but just in the spirit of collegiality and open communication, letting your PCA know that you're interested in what's going on, for example, with the Washington Association with their DA program. For MAs, there's a lot of resources out there and a couple of exciting things coming out. Again, the Washington Association has a program. The Alaska Primary Care Association, really interesting, has a variety of apprenticeship programs, including an MA. So if you want to go and take a look at some of that stuff, I think, as I mentioned before, if there are states that are already moving forward with these programs to support the health centers, to have trainees in the organization, not like you don't need to go and create something brand new for yourself to stand alone. Does it mean you can't or shouldn't? Not necessarily, but take a look at these resources. And then the Nebraska PCA is going forward with an MA program and eventually a dental assistant program too, which is pretty exciting. I'm sure there are other PCAs across the country doing cool stuff. Those are just the ones that I know of and have talked about in the last couple of weeks with folks. So if you know of a PCA who's doing something cool, I would love to collect that information and share it out with you guys here. So that is the end of my short spiel on resources, and I'm going to move forward and continue to collect these things. When I did an assessment of the survey responses, the programs that most of you are looking at are, let's see, NPs and MAs, or nursing in general, are the programs that most of you are looking at. And then coming in a close second are CHWs and the dental hygienists and assistants. And then in third place, we have MDDO and LCSW. So I'll do a little bit more work looking into LCSW and then pharmacy and physician's assistant as well. So hopefully we'll have some more resources to add, but feel free to share with the group on the chat. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions or comments or observations.
This is Dean Germano. These resources are really about, you know, about policies, procedures, I imagine, how they did start up, because you think of like a training program like an RDA program, there's clinical space and faculty. I mean, there's hands-on expertise that's needed to get them to a point where they can then do their boards, right, and be able to pass in that case. And then of course each state has its own regulations around some of these things too. So these are resources to help with that. But I think that the make or buy option for us depends on what's in our communities, and we have to make those decisions.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Dean, and brings us into the next section of the conversation, actually. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna get out of this and stop sharing. So you should have, if you haven't already, you should have received a flow chart that looks like this. Let me get back to sharing here. Okay. So to that end, Dean, and this is something that I'm drafting. So again, I'm always open for edits and changes. Well, actually, let me pause. ACA team, did we manage to get this sent out to the attendees prior to the session?
We did not. I was actually just putting it in the chat that this will be posted in the resources section of this week's in the discussion board.
Okay. Cool. So what I'm trying to do then is outline for you guys sort of where those decision points are. And as Dean mentioned, those resources, they're great to build an understanding of what are the requirements, what are the needs, but not necessarily getting you through those internal decision points and conversations. So this flowchart starts with the assumption that you're here because you're interested in developing or have an HPET program of some sort. Starting at the very high level, and perhaps some of you already have these things, do you have buy-in? I think presence, your presence here indicates some level of buy-in, right? And what are the conversations to have? And as noted in the Word document that we shared last time, these relate directly to a document that was in the resources for California. So there's a companion piece for this, and we'll get the whole packet of everything sent and in your hands. You know, we talked about the needs assessment. Have you done the needs assessment? Do you know what you need? And I would just want to make one comment of, yes, you probably do. There's two ways to approach this. You can pick the program and then do the needs assessment, so you have a narrower field of data to look through. Or if you're going broad and saying, like, we have a general feeling that maybe it's 2 or 3 options are on the table for us, maybe then a broader needs assessment is done. So I don't think that there's one right way to do this needs assessment. And then you'll want to have your planning team, right? And so once you kind of have all of these really, really high level pieces pulled together, you can move into more of the feasibility, digging into those conversations. So, and this is where Dean's comment pivots into this conversation for me. And of course, please stop me and jump in with comments or questions here if there's anything missing. Oh, cool. Thank you for putting a download up for us, Mariah. I appreciate that. And could you do me a favor as well, Mariah, and put the updated Word document that I sent up there too?
Sure thing.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the questions that I think you need to start with is, are there other programs nearby doing the same training? And I ask this not because I would absolutely suggest that partnering is the way to go, but for example, I was having a conversation with a couple of CHCs in a rural space, and they were looking at it as they have a pretty low unemployment rate. If they went ahead and opened a training program, maybe we were talking very generally and broadly, but if they went ahead and opened a training program that was going to compete with another training program in their community, they were really thinking that it was just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Whether or not that training program then is serving their needs, right, and they're getting learners into their health centers or staff into their health centers through those programs, I think is a different conversation, but really almost doing more of a landscape evaluation of who is out there possibly doing the same work. Can you leverage those relationships or develop relationships to have those learners in your space? Or is there a real need for you to move forward with developing this program? And I would say for the purposes of the document, the strategic workforce plan, going out and developing those partnerships is absolutely a strategic plan. That is an approach. You don't have to develop a new program. But Dean, I want to kind of take it back to you and dig a little bit more into what you were saying as far as like what is available in your community. What are the different pieces of that you're looking at when you're thinking of developing new programs or partnering?
Well, I think, part of the needs assessment, again, I'm thinking of the health center. I mean, we always kind of approach this as what is our personal need, right? We need so many RDAs or whatever it is, but we can't lose sight of what the marketplace looks like, because, what I hate to happen is us to be a training site for somebody else, right? You spend all that time, energy, resources, and then they take the better paying job or they move on. And that's always the worry about doing it on your own. I think having a better sense of what the marketplace looks like and leveraging relationships if they exist is often the better way to go, I think. It's harder in many respects because you don't have as much control. But, or another way is to maybe start up something through your community college or something that they may have been thinking about but needed a little extra push. I remember, I use an example, we needed a dental hygiene school here so badly for years, and we managed to get the dental society and ourselves together with the college, and lo and behold, we created a dental hygiene school. And and what was interesting there in California state rules, the college could not handpick students from our region. So even there, you could have LA applicants overwhelm the program who have no intention of staying. So the college got creative, and this is where, feeding it in, and said, okay, you have to do these prerequisites that are only offered at Shasta College in order to apply. So they sort of they managed to make it a little more difficult so that we can at least let the local kids have a shot at getting in. So there are all these things and that you have to weigh. And we do have training programs, but as you said, part of it is competitiveness. Young people are choosing not to go into healthcare. They've been scared away, or they're thinking, because of the pandemic and other things. So there's a lot to weigh in these kinds of decisions, and you got to do it for the long term. I would say that for us, I always tell people when we get into training, we're not a training organization. We are a care delivery organization that uses training to help us do that. I mean, you got to kind of, those nuances do matter. Anyways, I'll shut up. Thank you.
No, that was fabulous. I appreciate you sharing. And I think too, as you're saying, like, that's a really important distinction that you've made there as being a care delivery organization. I really suggest having a mission for at least your training programs. But in the case of Shasta, like you're saying, Dean, you guys are a care delivery organization. That is your mission. That is your vision, is that there will be care for everybody. And so maybe there's not, if you're using training as a pathway to delivering that care, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to, just to go back to the first page, take a look at your whole organizational mission. There are some health centers and some groups, some folks out there who are absolutely like, we are training the next generation of providers. And it could be interesting to take a look. I'm sure there are some that I could pull out of my pocket, but just examining the why of what you're doing and who you're partnering with, I think is really important. But yeah, Dean, thank you. That was really great insight, and I appreciate you sharing that. When we think about accreditation, not every program is going to need accreditation, especially if we're thinking more on the volunteer end of things, or if you're going out engaging in maybe like elementary school or high school programs. But there are those programs that do require accreditation, and we shared in session 1, if you can remember that far back, feels like a million years ago at this point, sort of what we do internally here at Whipley as far as the gap analysis. And it's a little bit to what Dean was saying, is you go in and you look at the really in-depth requirements to have a program. They'll talk about policy, they'll talk about space, they'll talk about clinical volumes, all of these different pieces actually that I've listed quite a few of on the left-hand side here, that you'll want to think about and look at whether or not you have it. So for example, do you have enough practice rooms to bring on these different learners and accommodate them, as well as your existing provider staff? Do you have non-clinical space for them to do their educational experiences? These things are stuff that you'll want to kind of check the box before you get too far down the road of committing yourself to a program. You don't want to get into a program and be like, oh shoot, now we have to build a new building. That's a whole nother effort to deal with, right? So that's where we get into that feasibility study. How realistic is it for us to be doing this program in this way, right? And brings back some of those questions. Does it make more sense for us to have the conversations with the local community college, with our closest neighbor community health center, someone else along those lines, or again, nonprofit organizations in the community, perhaps? And so once you kind of address these higher level, this is when I suggest you start to move into those design elements and framing things out. None of this is set in stone. I think there is an art to approaching this. So this is not biblical in any way, but this is my suggestion. So this is where the mission piece, this is where the mission piece comes in, making that determination that mentioned a moment ago with Dean's comments about being a care delivery organization. Then I think that you'll want to make sure that you're having engagement of your board if you haven't already. It's just always nice to have those folks engaged and understanding what's going on. That could be a whole nother peer learning group though, I think. Any questions so far on these pieces or comments or observation? Okay. So on the third page of this chart is, this one got kind of busy, but this is where you're really, the rubber is meeting the road here. Actually, I wonder, let's do that. Boom. Okay, so as you're getting into your program design, there are a number of elements, and perhaps I've missed some, that you're going to want to be bringing all of these pieces, all this work that you've done together. Do you have existing programs? Do you have existing partners? Different requirements and things that you need to keep in mind as you're designing the program. What did you find out in your needs assessment? What is that data? What is your mission? Talked about the feasibility and the gap analysis, and really those program accreditation standards and requirements, if they are applicable, right? And I guess actually probably should call out specifically, state requirements. They're going to be different depending on the program. I can say like LCSW, for example, is different in almost every state. Well, let me take that back. I haven't done the scientific research to tell you whether or not every state is absolutely different, but I've come across different models in each. And then what I tried to do here is, as you're putting together the program design, what are the different elements or considerations that you want to have as you're looking through these different pieces? So you can work through them whatever order you really want to. This is just kind of what makes sense to my brain. But what is going to be in your curriculum? Why are people going to want to come to your health center to learn these things? You're not, how do I want to frame this? I think, you really don't want to just recreate something that's already in existence. What is it that's going to set you apart about that curriculum? And I think, and maybe we've said it here before, that community health centers really have a rich and unique experience of how we're doing team-based care, how we're doing community-based care, different pieces of how we do our work really should show up in the curriculum design, is what I would say. Anybody on the call today who has gone through curriculum design want to add anything to sort of how they move through designing this? No? Okay. Oh.
So, sorry, this is Beth Cumberland. I'm trying to get my camera on. I'm a former nurse educator, and one of the things that's really important with curriculum design is to make sure that you pull in any of the WACs or licensure scope of practice for those curriculum for that design, because that will also guide what is done within each region.
Absolutely great. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other thoughts or questions on curriculum?
Just that if there's accreditation, they almost always have requirements you have to build into your program. So
absolutely. Mel, you came on camera. Were you wanting to add to the conversation?
No, I was just agreeing with Dean. We have our fellowship program residency, so we have experience dealing with the accreditation bodies and the different requirements we have to merge in with other state and federal laws and things. So it can be challenging, but also interesting how stringent they are on their requirements. So,
and they can change. Sorry, what's that?
Yeah, no, we've had great success. So our programs have done very well and continue to do well. Just good.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear you. And just as a note, as you were speaking, Mel, and I shouted in the middle of your sentence, I apologize, but those requirements can change too. So you want to, how do you keep up on what those changing requirements are going to be? Yeah, some of you who might be in like the family medicine space might be hearing about upcoming changes too. So, and as you're developing your curriculum, thinking about your faculty, who are going to be your preceptors? Is there a mentorship framework that you want to look at? And let me back up actually the curriculum elements. I think there's a number of like clinical experiences, of course, that folks are going to want to have, but what are those, I don't want to say traditional education, but like more didactic experiences, or are there peer learning groups, things like that, that you want to be considering different models of, or is there like a Project Echo that you can link into, things like that. Going back to the faculty. So really thinking about how the folks you have on your team now, whether they want to, whether they have an interest. I think we've said here before that like if someone really has no interest in being a teacher, perhaps they aren't the best idea for a preceptor. But maybe they're great as a one-on-one mentor. And then kind of going back to what those requirements are for accreditation, you might need to have a specific kind of person filling a specific kind of role. So for example, they might need to have a particular credential, right? So I'm thinking of DIOs or program directors for graduate medical education. So, you know, really thinking about who you have, what are the gaps that you have there? So that would be another piece of your feasibility analysis, is to look at what are your gaps in your faculty. Other thoughts on faculty, Dean?
Just that depending on the training program, often it's your best employees who want to be in those roles. So you have to weigh what you're going to lose on the operations side by creating those opportunities on the training side, at least in the short run. Yeah, that's been my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. You lose productivity if you've got someone spending hours supervising, for sure. So, and I think I speak, oh, sorry. I just did, oh, guys, this is my dog, Boris. He's a giant Rottweiler. I just adopted him at the end of February, and apparently he wants to be a preceptor on this presentation. So I don't, okay, not right. Okay, we'll just try. Sorry. Lesson learned, next time he's in his kennel for a presentation. As you're going through this, okay, buddy, this is getting ridiculous. As you're going through this, I think aligning all of the work that you're doing with the curriculum and the faculty, and just how you're designing kind of this moves us, I think, into the administrative and operations, administration and operations piece, is what is going to be your recruitment and retention plan. Some programs will have a formal recruitment process that you can link into, but if not, how are you attracting those learners to your program? Does that require partnerships? Does that require marketing? And then really thinking about how you're going to either augment or change or develop, but I do think that they need to interrelate on the retention piece. So more along the lines of the administration operations, thinking about things that you aren't already doing that you're going to be asking your administration and operations team to do, right? IT is going to need to expand data collection, especially for those accredited programs. And I think just in general, you have well, it is a new program. You're going to want to be collecting that quality data. So is that a big lift compared to what you're currently doing or not? And how are you going to move through that? The evaluation plan, I mean, we come back to it, and I think this is a process that we're all engaged in anyway, but how does the evaluation come back into sort of your administration? How does it go into your quality improvement pieces, right? This is not going to be a standalone silo program. It will interact with so many different places in your organization. And then we come to the finances, and I think this is always a really sticky, tricky place for folks. And unfortunately, I can't give you solid numbers without having gone in and done a full financial analysis. And even then, perhaps that financial analysis will be different depending on which way the wind is blowing or the funding is coming. But thinking about your financials, I've tried to split it into two separate pieces: the expense assumptions that you want to be aware of and the revenue opportunities. And I'm sure I have missed pieces on both, but this could theoretically get you started. A really great concrete resource is inside that nurse practitioner book from CHC Inc. They kind of put together a rough, high level And it's just specific for the NPs, but it is a framework that I think you could use depending on what programs you're moving forward with. You could adapt it. Finance and administration is a big one. So anybody want to hop in and share thoughts on those?
Whatever you think is going to cost, double it.
That's fair. That's fair. That is fair. Can I ask you why, Dean? What has come up that has made that be
You
the
just
case?
don't anticipate, it all. I think you try the best you can. There are things that come out that you're not aware of. I would also share that, again, example, we're going through a scope changing event. Every state is a little different. And our state audits investigations have decided, for example, that our administrative costs associated with our NPPA fellowship costs are not reimbursable. So they're carving all that out in overhead. So whereas we thought, they would be allowable costs, in the end, the state has decided, no, they're not. So there's assumptions that you have that you think make total sense that somebody can come out of left field and demonstrate it differently. Anyways, just from experience.
No, it's great experience. And I think this is one place where I hear people kind of like their gears kind of grind to a halt because they don't have all of those clear answers and know what every assumption is. So unprofessional, taking off the professional hat, so unprofessional opinion. I kind of like what you're saying, Dean, is just do all your assumptions, double it, and then if you're happily surprised, fabulous, you're in the black.
Yeah, and do seek out other programs that that are there. And it is nothing better than to hear from colleagues who are doing it, right? I think, and going there and seeing for yourself, because I think you learn a lot, and I think it helps in minimizing that unknown piece.
Yeah, good call. That I'll put that in the next version of this document for sure, because I think too, just checking in with your colleagues at any point, folks who are going through it, is always a good touch base. I do think one of the strengths of the community health center movement is the amount of networking and collegiality there is. So if you reach out and you grab that phone and you talk to someone who's maybe doesn't want to talk to you, I can guarantee you there's someone else maybe down the road who will. So this is the end of my flow chart, and I'll stop there. And I think at this point you kind of want to do a check. Are we missing anything? You're going to implement the program. You're going to open your doors, whatever those timelines look like. Timelines is a piece that I haven't mentioned here, but you will want to be aware of what your timelines are, obviously, as you're going through this project. And then, as I mentioned before, just ongoing quality improvement. A lot of the accredited programs, I would not feel I'm stepping out of bounds by saying probably all of the accredited programs are going to have a quality improvement process required. And it's something that we're doing anyway, and it's just such a good idea. You don't want to develop a program in 1985 and still be running that same program in 2022. So, I mean, as a kid from the 80s, the world has changed a great deal. So, yes, I'll stop there. But this is a resource that I wanted to make available to you all because I think it helps to sort of see the linear or nonlinear process here as we're going through HPET. I'm looking at the time. We have about half an hour. Any questions or thoughts on that, or anything that you feel like that resource is missing, or something else that you're looking for that didn't address?
There are on occasion organizations that have turnkey operations that you can, if you don't have the confidence to do yourself, like I think it's CHC University has the MPPA or the MP program, residency program. I mean, those are viable alternatives if you feel you can't carry it off yourself, or you want to fast forward, something that might take years to develop. So there are a few kinds of things like that out there.
Yeah. So CHC Inc. has the NP program. There's NEMA does MAs. And I think if you're, and this is not me giving any sort of like approval, but they are out there, like Dean is saying. Another one to look into is, I'm totally blanking on it. Well, there's ATSU, which has like campuses that you could go and have campuses. We had one at NWRPCA, we administered a campus for ATSU down in Portland. Really cool opportunities to engage with learners there. And we got students coming through the hometown program who then went and stayed in the Portland campus and now are coming back to Portland to practice. So it's pretty cool opportunity.
And ATSU has started up the PA school in Santa Maria, and they have, I think, 10 or 12 learning centers for their second years for PA.
That's cool.
So, and I think they're still open for more sites if that's something you want to consider.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Dean. I hadn't been tracking on that one at all. And the Right Center, when you're looking at GME, again, not any sort of official blessing, but like just wanting to throw out there that as Dean is saying, there are these turnkey programs. I'll do a little bit more digging into what others might be out there for different pieces. Like nothing dental is jumping to mind unless somebody out there is knows of any. And two, checking in with the PCAs, and maybe that's something ACU team that we can do is kind of survey the PCAs and see what turnkey programs they're developing for folks too.
I would add that you should reach out to your workforce investment boards as well, because I think that's a federally mandated thing for most communities. You may not even be aware it exists, but they're there to develop workforce. And I know in ours here, we've been engaging with them more, and they have resources that they can throw at some of these training programs. So particularly the ones around MAs and DA, those kinds of jobs, they are very interested in helping. So you may want to schedule a meeting with them.
And community development funds. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be having those conversations with folks. We're working with a group down in Arkansas who their community got together and in the American Recovery Act got like 70 million that they then decided to put towards healthcare workforce development programs. So yeah, folks are, and there's just a lot of really great ideas that people are playing with. I apologize, my dog is just really opinionated about healthcare workforce today. Give me one moment, please, folks. He's just so passionate about the issue. I knew we had a connection when I saw him at the shelter. Such a good dog. So I think I have just kind of actually, I think I'm going to try to let you guys go a bit early today. I'm going to change the game plan. So the two documents, I've got the workflow for you all, which you can utilize. And it does line up with the updated strategic workforce template that I put together. So let me actually just take a minute here to show you that. Oh, my dog. Boris, you're not getting paid for this. All right, so you guys saw this last time, and it's been updated since. And what's that, Mel? No,
I said it's okay. It's nice background noise. It's better than having everyone else's microphones running and hearing other conversations. So
thank you. I appreciate that. And you also know that I'm very safe from whatever person is walking past the front of my house. I feel very secure.
Yeah, your animal's protecting you, doing the right thing. Hey.
Exactly. Either that or it was just like a dog that was small enough for him to eat. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what I've done is I've updated this document to outline, and this is really subjective again, very much how my brain works. So feel free to do something absolutely different. The goal being that by the end of our time together, I think we have 2 more sessions at this point, we will each of you will have a document that we're calling your strategic workforce plan. Come here. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and broken this down in the same framework as that, as the workflow document, right? So starting with goal 1, preparation, I encourage you to write goal language and objective language. If folks need conversations about how to write a SMART goal or a SMART objective, we can definitely do that, or what the relationship is with goals and objectives. But for now, I'm just going to assume you all have seeing a strategic plan framework. And then what I would encourage you to do is just to think about, like, what are the actions that you're going to do to make sure you have the business case and buy-in. If you already have existing programs, you already have it. Maybe it's something along the lines of updating the business case, or updating your stakeholders, or having communications about those things, if we're talking about an existing program, right? So I've kind of gone through and tried to break it down in that big feasibility, mission, preparation, and program design space to follow along that decision tree. This will be yours in a Word format. If it's not already, I did not go into partnerships. That one gets kind of muddy, but we can talk about that next time if y'all are interested. So my thought at this point is we can do one of two things. We can either say, cool, we have these awesome resources, and Boris, the dog, is super excited about workforce planning, and you all can have, at this point, 10 minutes of your day back, or 25 minutes of your day back, however you're planning that. Or we could go into some small groups and have conversations about different ideas for actions. What would you guys find most valuable at this point?
Kelly, I think I'd like to go through the template and just see how your flowchart matches, and get an idea on where I might be able to pencil some existing data in, and then we can probably discuss that at the next one, perhaps.
So you're suggesting no small groups today, just spending some time individually with the document?
I think so. That would be beneficial, but of course, you know, depends on how everyone else feels. They might have some
I'd like
ideas
to
already.
take a look at it on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very new and there's a lot of information, I think.
What? Me throwing a whole bunch of information at you at once? That's wild, Mel. How dare you?
I love that, Kelly. That's great. It's better than running with nothing. You're giving us some guidelines. I love that. Some examples. It was very detailed, and it's great brainstorming and prompting us to think on those topics that you shared today.
Thank you. That's very validating. And I'm gonna put that in a cross stitch and hang that on my wall. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. But you did all the work.
All right. Well, does anybody have strong objections or feel differently? We can also split into two and have folks get 10 extra minutes back, and those of you who are interested in staying can stay, and we can chat a little bit longer. How about we do that? If you're interested in staying, stick around. If not, you guys are, as always, fabulous, and I adore you. And we'll make sure that we get the Word version of that document in your hands. And the homework, the idea behind the homework this time, since we do have the one-on-one set up, mostly on the calendar, would be to take advantage of having one-on-one time with me and Kiki, to kind of talk through whatever issues or questions y'all are having. So if there's an amount of work that you can get done before, what is that, the second week of April, we're meeting with most folks. So, and hit me up if you have any questions in the meantime, is what I'll say to that as well.
I have a clarification question.
Yes.
So when we're filling out this document, can we have one particular HPET program in mind? Like, we don't need to do this for the organization. We can pick one and drill down.
That is absolutely correct. Thank you, Julia. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, that's how I envisioned it, was for one.
Thank you.
For those of you who have 10 and want to do 10, have a great time. But yeah, I suggest picking one, the one that you're feeling most, either that you're maybe you're already developing it, maybe you just developed it, and this is kind of an exercise to document those conversations for next time. I think that's totally fair. Or it's an existing program, and what's your quality improvement piece? And you can, none of the sections that I put in there are absolutely required. I just put them in there for ease of access and conversation. So you can delete whatever you feel. Nothing's required.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, my friends. Well, then we will be in touch. Hit me up if you have any questions. I'm all here. ACU team, Alex and Suzanne and Mariah are always here. And like I said, we adore you. So we'll check in. What's our next meeting? April something or other?
I believe it is on April the 5th. And I'm putting that in the chat right now. Yep.
Sweet. Thank you, Suzanne. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Alex.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.